This is a public health announcement brought to you by Heather Shepard,
the Primal Pioneer. Live an outdoor life.
This is the Primal Pioneer podcast, a show dedicated to helping you achieve optimal health by making radical lifestyle, dietary, and environmental shifts to support forward movement with your health. I'm your host, Heather Shepard, radical health practitioner, gut health specialist, and homeopathic doctor in training. When I was 23 years old, I suffered a TBI, or a traumatic brain injury. This shifted my life from being a super athletic type A kind of person to, well, being a slug. The side effects of my TBI left me sidelined from physical activity for nearly 12 years. I tried every modality under the sun, desperately yearning, trying, and hoping to get better. It wasn't until I stepped outside of the conventional medical model and even much of the alternative medical model that I saw real, lasting progress with my health. Even after 12 years of struggling with the negative side effects of my TBI, poor digestion, brain fog, brain pain, anxiety, poor sleep, weight gain, and low energy levels, today I feel better than I did in my 20s before I experienced my brain injury. And I achieved my version of optimal health by deep diving into the areas of the body, particularly the mitochondria and emotional energetics, that most notably affect and impact our health. Sadly, however, these are areas of health that most healthcare practitioners overlook and underconsider today. By utilizing the therapeutic healing capabilities of sunlight, a high-octane diet, which I refer to as my jet fuel diet, and by improving my light and EMF environment, I went from 0 to 100 with my health in a very short period of time. All I needed were the right tools, environment, and modalities to get me there. Today, I help thousands of people overcome both acute and chronic ailments using my nature and science-based radical approach to health. And during this episode of the Primal Pioneer podcast, I talk about relocation. This episode technically isn't about real estate. It's about relocation and your health. Sometimes the very best medicine to helping you move forward with your health is to physically change location. To many, this might sound extreme. However, doctors for millennia have been encouraging those with chronic illness to move to specific locations to support their health in order to give their body the very best chance at making a partial to full recovery. I've experienced the benefits of relocating to support my health and the health and well-being of many of my private clients as well. During today's episode, I'm going to talk about specific diseases and disorders where the very best medicine just may require relocating to an environment that supports your health and healing path. I'll also share details regarding how to tell if a location may or may not be a fit for your healing needs, and how to tell if a specific location might be the best medicine to help support you, your health, and healing desires. I know in my personal healing path, if I wouldn't have been open to relocating, my health would have continued to go downhill. Relocation may not be the answer for your health struggles, but it just could be if you struggle with obesity, autoimmunity such as MS or arthritis, as well as Crohn's, type 2 diabetes, Hashimoto's, hormonal imbalances, and or chronic gut issues. Now, let's dive into this episode all about relocation and environment so you can determine if this may be an important step for you to consider along your healing path. I know this topic may be a tough pill to swallow for some. The thought of relocating just to support my health, really, to many, this is a ludicrous thought. To others, it's completely overwhelming and seems like an impossible task. Sometimes our work, taking care of our kids, and keeping a close eye on elderly parents can keep some from even considering relocation as an option to supporting their health. While I too have faced many of these challenges when considering relocation, I can honestly say that now I can show up not only for my family, loved ones, and community much more so than I did prior to relocating, but I can show up for myself in deeper ways as well. This choice to relocate to support my health has been an absolute blessing along my personal, my professional, and my path with improving the health of my relationships with a lot of people as well. While some people can absolutely achieve their version of optimal health in the location they're currently in, I have found that with many of my clients, especially those who are really sick, their very best medicine has been relocation. I know this has been the very best medicine for me as well. And it's something that has inspired me to travel to different locations for the primary sake of observing how my body feels and responds to a particular environment. I've noticed that the one thing that most notably influences my health is the environment I'm in long term. Now, I want to share a little bit about my healing story and relocation process because maybe you can relate. Maybe you have a similar story. Maybe you have a story that you've been considering with regard to your health. Maybe you've come up against a stuck point with your health and you don't know what to do to move forward. Relocation may be a good option for you, and I'm going to share my story with you as you just might resonate with this and your healing process and journey as well. So here we go. One February morning, I was driving to work. I lost control of my car and split a telephone pole in two. I suffered brain injuries, but these didn't show up on CAT scans or MRIs, but they did show up loud and clear in my physical body. Whenever I would walk, I would feel this pressure in my head so intensely that I had to sit down or lay down for much of the day. And this literally occurred for years after my accident. So physical activity was totally out of the question. And if I did participate in any type of like running, jogging, trying to lift weights, even like trying to kick a soccer ball around the yard, it left me dizzy. I was fatigued for days and had a migraine for at least a week. Anyone who knows me likely knows that this must have been a living hell for me because I'm super active. I've always been involved in sports. I've always been moving my body. And, you know, on a daily basis, I was always physical up until this point. So this was a really, really traumatic, life-changing, life-altering kind of life and death experience that I was going through. And after going from specialist to specialist in Knoxville, Tennessee, where my accident occurred, only for them to tell me that I was fine and to return to work, like I literally knew something was totally 100% wrong and I wasn't going to get the help that I needed there. So I decided to leave. I packed my bags and headed for Portland, Oregon. And I headed there because for about a few hours after the first acupuncture session I ever had, I experienced full relief from my symptoms. And then I'd go back for acupuncture and have a similar experience and I'd have a little bit of relief. And this was really eye-opening and inspiring to me. It opened my eyes to the alternative healing world. So I enrolled in a Master's of Chinese Medicine program in Portland, Oregon. I wanted to learn how to master this healing craft to help others feel better too. And I thought at the time it was going to be the thing that helped me heal. And I knew there was something to this medicine. Chinese medicine is really good. It's really good medicine. It's ancient medicine. It provided me with relief that no other modality had up until that point. And I wanted to learn everything I could about acupuncture and alternative health. So off I went. When I got to Portland, I was in seventh heaven. Maybe some of you have experienced this when you move to a new place and you just like fall in love immediately. That was me in Portland. I love the diversity. I love the open-armed queer culture. I love the food. I love the mindset around sustainable living and growing your own food and love your farmer. I thought to myself, I'm finally home. This is awesome. This is where I belong. But the longer and longer I was in Portland, the worse and worse I felt in my physical body, which totally sucked. It was such a bummer because I love the people. I love the mindset of the people. I love the food availability. I love the alternative medicine world there. It was literally a really great community. But even despite all the awesome organic food and acupuncture sessions I was getting, my health was going downhill. And I felt this most notably in my anxiety levels and energy levels. I had no energy and my anxiety was through the roof. My anxiety climbed to the point where on some days I was so anxious I couldn't leave my house. Okay, I want to pause here because for any of you out there who've suffered from a traumatic event or events, high anxiety and heightened phobias around literally anything are really common. So things like fear of leaving the house, fear of the dark, fear of elevators, fear of driving over bridges, fear of death to like an extreme level that's like, what about Bob level, right? These fears can heighten after a traumatic event if the trauma hasn't been processed using a handful of holistic modalities such as homeopathy and sunlight therapy. So literally the energetics of that trauma will stay in your body. And then over time, the more insults your body's exposed to, the trauma will just continue to build, and that can happen really quickly or it can happen slowly over time. And I, for one, at that time was not engaged in homeopathy or sunlight therapy. However, I was at the peak of my anxiety attacks. But later on in my healing path, homeopathy and sunlight therapy became staples in my health recovery process. Now, on the phobia level here, most people tend to think that their phobias mean that there's something wrong with them. They can't do anything about them and they just have to learn how to deal with them and how to live with them. I want you to know that this is 100% untrue. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing messed up. It's literally some program in you, some trauma got activated, and it likely stimulated a type of pathology in maybe your physical and or emotional body. Okay. And there's a lot you can do to help clear those from your body over time. I found really, really helpful ways to do this is a combination of sunlight therapy with homeopathy. So I just wanted to put that little insert in about phobias because I know they're real. And I also know that I'm not I'm a normal, healthy person and I have these phobias. And sometimes when you have them, you feel not normal. You feel like, whoa, something's like really wrong with me. But literally, there's usually not. It's usually just a trauma that simply needs attention and clearing from your body, from your blueprint. And this is often very, very possible. Okay, let's go back to Portland because if you're unfamiliar with Portland, Oregon, there's one thing that everyone there does know about the area. It rains and the sun hardly comes out. Like literally rain, 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 darkness, gloominess, and no sunshine. And this combination will make anyone with a brain injury, with depression, with gut issues, or other chronic ailments worse. And for those of you who visited my site, heathershepherd.com, and just a little insert here, my first name is spelled Heathar, last name Shepherd, SHEPARD.com. Anyone who's visited my site and have picked up a copy of the Sunlight RX ebook, you know why it isn't just plants who need sunlight to thrive and live, but humans too need this light, and we need a lot of it, especially modern day. So sunlight's important on a lot of different levels for the healing process, and this episode will talk a lot about that. But my anxiety levels climbed so high in Portland that I had to leave the city, and I didn't know I had to leave it or why I had to leave it at the time. I just knew I wasn't going to be able to heal in this place. I wasn't getting better. I was getting worse. And at the time, I wasn't savvy about the therapeutic benefits of sunlight. I didn't know how latitude impacted my health, but what inspired me to move is that one night I had a dream to move to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the dream was really strong and it was vivid. And it was like, boom, I'm there. And so that dream really stuck with me. And a couple months after the dream, I packed my car and drove to Santa Fe, New Mexico for a vacation. I thought, hey, let me just check this place out. Maybe there's something there to, explore on a vacation. But I never left that vacation. I never returned to Portland after the vacation. I relocated to Santa Fe and stayed there for the next 8 years of my life. And I stayed there because as soon as I set foot in that state, I literally started to feel better. Maybe it was me being grounded for, a long time. When I first got there, I lived in a teepee, and I lived in this area with a huge garden and by the water, and there was a lot of sunlight. So I was getting up at sunrise to help in the garden. And it was like, whoa, it was just like this total reboot. And it was like me just unwinding and getting back to nature. It was truly medicine. I was like, okay, I'm staying here. This is amazing. And I feel so much better. So it was worth it to me to move and feel better than to stay where I was and to suffer. That to me wasn't a life. It wasn't a life that I wanted to continue to play out. Each day I lived in Portland, I would literally wake up and I would say to myself, okay, it's kind of like this pep talk. How many self-care therapies can I do today just to tread water with my health, to basically not go to the anxiety panic state? And how many healthcare practitioners can I see each week just to delay my symptoms or keep them at bay for a few hours to a few days at best on end, right? So literally those were the questions I asked myself on a daily basis. So when I moved and didn't have to ask myself those questions and felt 100% better over time, this wasn't instantaneous. This was a gradual feel better. It wasn't like, oh, I'm totally cured. It was like, yeah, this is going to take some time, but I started to feel better immediately. So moving was well worth it for me. The question now is it well worth it for you? And I want to dive into this question a bit more because most people don't fully connect the dots between their living environment and how it impacts their health. Okay, there's a lot of different layers to this, and I want to get into this a little bit here during this episode to help you understand this connection more deeply so you can make the shifts and transformations you need to best support your health. Okay, so here are the top 4 things to consider when it comes to your environment, location, and how these 2 factors, environment and location, impact your health. I'm going to go through these 4 things in detail. And so I would invite you to just sink into this chat, think about where you're currently living, see what resonates with you, see what sticks out to you. And then also, if you're considering a move, these are the top 4 things or one of the top 4 things that I would consider also if you're thinking about, okay, where do I want to live? Where should I move? Here we go. Number 1, your latitude. Latitude is the degree at which your city or town is located. So, for example, I live in Arizona at about the 33-degree latitude. I used to live in Portland, Oregon, which is at the 45-degree latitude. The question is, why is this a big deal when it comes to your health and achieving your healing potential? Literally, this boils down to one thing: sunlight availability. The higher your latitude, the less sunlight you're going to receive on a yearly basis. Unless, here's a little mito hack tip here, unless you live at an altitude or elevation, okay, same thing, of 5,000 feet or above, okay, then you'll have, the potential for more sunlight access throughout the year. Areas with greater sunlight availability have greater access to nature's medicine kit, which is sunlight, but not just sunlight, vitamin D. So one misconception around sunlight is that vitamin D, you can go out in sunlight any time of year, any time of day, and make vitamin D. And that's actually not true. You only make vitamin D in UVB afternoon light. UVB light is very strong. It's the light that carbohydrates are grown in. Carbohydrates don't grow well unless UVB light is present. That's why when you go to the tropics, there's all these mangoes and tropical fruits and citrus fruits and so forth, because they need a very strong light environment in order to grow and be healthy and thrive. So in the northern hemisphere, vitamin D making light not only is it not available all times of the day, it's not available all times of the day anywhere in the world, but it's not available all year as well. So in the northern hemisphere, vitamin D making light, that UVB light, is available approximately from about April 15th to August 15th. And you can reverse this for the southern hemisphere. So you have a window of time to boost your vitamin D levels. And the idea is to supercharge these levels so that when winter comes, you're a healing machine, your immune system's strong, you don't have seasonal affective disorder, you don't get depressed, you don't get constipated, you don't get leaky gut in winter months. Your sex drive doesn't go down, your menstrual cycle doesn't get, too altered. You feel healthy throughout winter. Well, let's just talk for a quick minute here about healthy vitamin D levels. Healthy vitamin D levels are not at the level that the standard of care Western world recommends. What it's like, if you're at 30, you're at a good level. Anything below 20 is a little bit dangerous. Let's keep an eye on it. Anything below 20 means your risk of cancer and autoimmunity goes up like a huge amount. If you're at 30, that's still very low. Okay, when I work with a client, I want to see them depending on their skin pigmentation. So the darker one's skin, the highest your vitamin D levels can get from solar UVB light exposure is somewhere between about 60 and 80. So that's a really good level for those with darker skin pigmentation. And I described this in the Sunlight RX ebook. Now, those with a lighter skin pigmentation like myself, we want to aim for higher levels. We're able to make higher levels. We need higher levels of vitamin D. And we need to be, if you're in a 90 to a 120, okay, now we're talking good vitamin D levels. So you just throw out what the mainstream tells you. The conventional doctors' recommendations around vitamin D levels, they're far too low. And we don't want to achieve this. We're not going to have the same positive beneficial health effects from vitamin D from a pill as we will from solar vitamin D, making vitamin D from sunlight, from UVB light. The Sunlight RX ebook goes into great detail on how you can do this, okay? So you can also track vitamin D availability in your area by downloading an app called D as in dog, D Minder. It's a really great app. And what I encourage people to do is put in wherever they're located, their city, state, country, etc. It'll pull up the degree latitude. It'll pull up where you're located, and it will show the UVB light availability in your area each day. It'll show this. It'll show it when it starts to show up, when it starts to go away. It'll give you a window of time of when vitamin D making light's available. So when the UVI, the UV index, is at 5 or above on that app, you can pump out vitamin D from UVB light. And the higher the UVI or the UV index is, the more vitamin D you can make and pump out. So that's a real goal. This is why latitude matters. going to make a t-shirt that says that latitude matters. No one will get it, but now you all will, because the higher you are in degrees of latitude, the less sunny days you have available to you, and you're going to have a shorter window time frame of your ability to make vitamin D from sunlight. You will have a window, and you're going to want to take full advantage of that window, but it'll be less, and the sunlight will be weaker. It won't be as strong than, say, if you lived in southern Mexico versus in the summer versus, say, Portland, Oregon, for example. So use that app to gauge your vitamin D availability and when UVB light shows up, and then use the Sunlight RX to prep your skin and your body to receive that light when it shows up. Now, those living closest to the equator, so anything from 0 degrees latitude to 27, 28 degrees latitude, have strong solar exposure all year. And what this means simply is that you have UVB light availability all year round. So you can make vitamin D in December, January, February, April, May, etc., right? So with every single chronic disease and even acute infectious disease, there's a close tie to low vitamin D levels and chronic disease and infectious disease. So this is why I encourage people to explore their latitude and to seek out a location with as low of a latitude as you can get to in order to support your health. The sicker you are, you want to get to the lowest level of latitude as you can. And even if you get inside the 20-degree latitudes, that's going to be very helpful when it comes to vitamin D availability on a yearly basis. Because as you climb in latitude, sunlight availability goes down. And we even see the prevalence of certain diseases increase as latitude increases. So we see this in MS, we see this in osteoporosis, we see this in cancer, especially breast cancer and colon cancer. We see this in obesity, we see this in type 2 diabetes, and we see this in gut autoimmunity, that all of these things and the susceptibility to these disorders increase as latitude increases. Now, in the States, the average number of sunny days in the entire U.S. is right around 205. Since experiencing profound shifts with my brain healing, my brain health, my energy levels, my sleep, I literally now refuse to live in an area with suboptimal sunlight availability because it's had such a profoundly positive impact on my health as well as those of my patients. Currently, I live in Sedona, Arizona, which has an average of 278 sunny days per year. Sedona also has amazing sunrises, which allows me to get at least an hour or two all year of photobiomodulation or red light therapy each morning. And this is a really important step to health and healing. You want as much red light from that sunrise as you can. A place like Portland, Oregon, which was an area I felt my worst, has an average of 144 sunny days per year. So we see, okay, I can now connect the dots as to why I started to feel so bad in that state. Now, one of my favorite vacation spots I tend to plan my winter vacations around is in Mexico. And I found this place that has an average of 345 days of sunshine per year. The things I get excited about are things like this, because I can go and be in sunlight and get an extra vitamin D boost during the winter months. And I feel a lot of people are like, oh, I went to Mexico and I felt horrible and I got so sick. It's like, well, if you know where your food's coming from, if you don't eat off of food carts, if you go to the local farmers markets, if you go to reputable organic restaurants, I've had no issues, and I've literally had the best digestive health in my life whenever I visit Mexico. And I fully attribute this to the very strong sunlight that's available, at least in the place that I visited, was very strong sunlight, and I felt really, really good. And I fully attribute this to boosting my vitamin D levels a lot while I was there. Now, when I look back at my health struggles as a kid, which I'd encourage you to do this. Like, where did you grow up? How did you feel? What was the degree latitude? Because when I look back at my health struggles as a kid, I routinely experienced strep throat, ear infections, and sluggish digestion throughout my childhood. And I have to look at the degree latitude where I grew up in. I grew up in a rural town outside of Rochester, New York, located in upstate New York. Okay, this isn't the city. This is like 6 hours from New York City. And like literally this area had a shit ton of snow each year, fall, winter, spring, snow, right? Rochester has an average of 165 sunny days per year, just like a few more than Portland. So this is super low. And to me, this is why New York has a high percentage of obesity, type 2 diabetes, MS, arthritis, osteoporosis, and cancer rates that continue to climb each year. Now, I will insert. Let's say you live at a lower latitude than New York. Okay, let's just take Florida, for example, right? Or Mexico. And you don't go outside, and you're inside on your devices, and you don't see the sun, and maybe you live really close to a cell phone tower. You're going to have the exact same experience with your health as someone who lives at a high latitude, because you're creating the same exact environment as somebody at a high latitude. So this is why diseases can show up anywhere, right? It's not just New York where there's obesity and cancer and MS, right? People can get these even at lower latitudes if they live in a really poor environment. So whenever I start to bring people's attention to this discussion around latitude and health, a common question that comes up is, well, what about the ancient people? They didn't have all these health issues even when they lived at high latitudes. And honestly, this is an awesome question, and I'm going to try to give you a solid answer here because it's one that I have thought about and explored and researched for quite some time. And this really boils down to ancient people did not live in the same environment as we do today. So our excessive and instantaneous access to modern technology really plays a huge factor. So Wi-Fi, cell phones, cell towers, these are not health-disturbing roadblocks that our ancient ancestors had to face, but are definitely health-disturbing roadblocks that we have to face today. And we have to consider our environment. Our ancient ancestors didn't have artificial light until 1879, and soon after went from the DC grid to the AC power grid. And this was a huge jump with regard to electricity exposure levels. Anyone who wants to research the impact of electricity and the power grid on our health, I cannot recommend more this book by Andrew Marino called Going Somewhere. It's a dense book. It's thick. It's full of science. It's also kind of like a memoir of Dr. Andrew Marino. And it's a book that I highly recommend if you want to learn more about the negative health impacts of electricity on health and how the science community and the legislature fails to look at this connection because of their ties to all the money they get from the electrical companies and so forth. It's a great read if you're into this sort of thing. Okay, so also today we also have temperature regulation. We have the ability to crank our heat to 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter when it's 15 outside, and vice versa. We have the ability to crank the AC to 75 degrees Fahrenheit when it's 95 degrees outside. This is disturbing to the circadian biology. And for those of you new to the term circadian biology, this simply refers to your biological time clock. And living in a constant state of artificial temperature is a huge contributing factor to obesity and type 2 diabetes today. And I personally think it's a big contributing factor to cancer as well. So I also want to give just some examples here of our ancestors and how they lived, especially when it comes to the Eskimos, because they lived at an exceptionally high latitude, right? But they didn't have the same negative health effects that we're having today, especially in people who are living at high latitudes. I was recently reading a book on the lifestyles of Eskimos, and many of them lived in igloos. They wore leather shoes, keeping them grounded to the earth. And when you're hooked into nature's power grid, the earth, right, you recharge your battery and gain energy from your environment. You're literally gaining energy. You're recharging your battery. And this is a very desirable thing when it comes to health, because in all modern disease, we're actually losing energy to our environment. We don't want to do that. We want to be gaining. And the ancients did this. The Eskimos did this. The Eskimo men, this is kind of like their daily routine I was reading about. The Eskimo men would go out on their sleds that their dogs would pull to fish for seal during the day. And the men would literally crawl onto the ice, and, they'd have on their all their beautiful furs that they've hunted, and they would be, bundled up, but they'd be crawling on the ice. And they'd crawl on the ice so not to startle the seal. And they would even mimic some of the seals, their movements, by crawling on the ice and making hand gestures that mocked those of a seal. And this was kind of like their camouflage. So the seal would think, hey, maybe that's a seal over there, right? But if we just think about this from a mitochondrial standpoint, these individuals were literally grounding. They were connected to the earth, and they were doing cold therapy all in one. And these are two really key practices that I utilize and teach people how to engage in to help support their health: grounding and cold therapy. And these are especially important to do in the winter, when sun is low and when it's less available. And they were naturally doing this. Now, the women would be at home. They'd be tending to the home. They'd be making seal stew, right? A lot of fat in seal. And they'd be tending to the fire. So this culture, these people, they were grounded. They were connected to the earth's power grid. They were eating a keto-based diet just naturally due to the availability and seasonal availability of foods. And they were practicing what we now consider cold therapy throughout their day. They were even exposed to red light from firelight, which is a natural source of light that supports mitochondrial health and energy production and longevity, right? We now call this photobiomodulation, and buy devices for super expensive prices to get this effect that they naturally got. So if you think about how we live our lives, particularly during the winter months in places that have cold, snowy winters, you can see how drastic this difference in lifestyle is compared to today. So this is why people living at high latitudes need more sunlight than they can literally shake a stick at present day, because we're not grounded. We're not eating a keto diet with high iodine and high fats from, seal stew or other, natural things from the earth and the ocean. We're living disconnected from the earth, and we have an unlimited food source, food availability. Like literally, we eat food like it's summer all the time. We have access to high carbohydrate foods during any month, during the winter months even. You can go into your store and buy a grapefruit in January, an orange in February. You can buy, all of the berries, all these high citrus, all these fruits, which are only grown in a very high UV light environment. This is why you go to the tropics and there's mangoes and papayas and pineapple and etc., because these fruits need a very high UV light, a very strong UV light environment in order to grow. So we have these foods available to us now in the wintertime, and we eat these. And so this combination creates inflammation, it creates obesity, it creates type 2 diabetes, it feeds cancer. And it's why people living in a high latitude today, especially anyone with less sunlight availability, struggle with many acute and chronic health conditions. So this is why, at least considering a vacation to an area with a low latitude is an important part of supporting our health modern day. Let's go to number 2, which is population density. So this one is pretty simple. The more people living in your area, the more EMF exposure you're going to have. And let's just take New York City, for example, because they in 2018 had a population of 8.4 million people. And they have a predicted average of 12 devices per person in New York City alone, starting in 2021. Okay, this is going to go up from the current number, which is 8 devices per person. This is an incredible amount of EMF exposure and levels just for one person. Like if you just lived in a house by yourself in the middle of nowhere, that's a lot of EMFs to be exposed to. Now, just think about 8.4 million people in a very small area having all these devices, and you're around these things every day. It's basically like living in a radio and microwave oven. And this isn't even considering the EMFs coming from things like cell towers, 5G small cells, and Wi-Fi exposure, right? Because everybody in their little tiny apartments, every 300 square feet apartment or whatever your square footage is there has a Wi-Fi box, which is totally insane. Like, I hope people like share Wi-Fi together there. I mean, or at least like internet, because if everybody has a Wi-Fi box, that's a hell of a lot of Wi-Fi to be exposed to. So I'm going to let you do the math as to how much radio frequency and microwave exposure that is. So just take 8.4 million people, times it by 12, which is the average number of devices per person, and you'll get how much exposure, roundabout you're getting. The lower the amount of people in an area, the less EMF exposure you're going to have. At least this is what we have to consider and think about at this point in history, at this point in time. Also, we know that Wi-Fi signals extend 300 yards from the Wi-Fi router. Currently, I want to mention this because currently Wi-Fi routers emit 700 million to 2.1 billion microwaves per second. And this is for 2G through 4G. This is not for 5G. And just as a note, if you see 5G come up on your computer, it is not, at least at this point in time, this could change. It is not connected to 5G out, being deployed in the cell towers and the small cell towers. This is a different 5G. I think their intention is to eventually sync it up, but currently that is not what's happening. Let's take a look at, if you have a tablet or laptop, you're getting 2.4 billion to 5.8 billion microwaves being emitted from that Wi-Fi to your device per second. That's insane. Like, that's a hell of a lot of microwaves. Like, that's literally a microwave oven. Think if you live in a tiny apartment and that's what you're being exposed to. And I'm not saying this like, oh, get fearful and be fearful and like there's nothing we can do about it. There's a hell of a lot we can do about it. And I talk all about this in my EMF 101 course, but there's a lot you can do about it. One main thing I talk about is, hey, learn how to get rid of Wi-Fi but still be connected using a hardwired connection. That's a super simple solution to basically take all the microwave pulses out of your apartment or home. It's really, really a healthy solution. It's something that I recommend to all my clients and teach people how to do to help support their health. So this is something to really consider. Like, if you're trying to heal, but you're around this environment, it's going to be really hard to heal and to get to root causes of your health struggles and to remove those struggles and root causes of those struggles, because we know that microwaves, they cause cancer. We know that. We know they damage DNA. We know they decrease the amount of water your mitochondria pumps out. And this is a necessary task. The ability of your mitochondria to produce water. Most people think, that we produce ATP energy. Well, that's really important. Yes, of course. But you also produce water. And this is a really necessary task that allows you to have energy, that allows you to sleep well, that allows you to have robust immunity and supports healthy electrolyte balance in your body. In a Wi-Fi microwave environment, the cells literally become dehydrated. We can see this in the BUN to creatine ratio when we look at your lab work. And this increases susceptibility to both acute and modern disease. So this is why many people living in a strong Wi-Fi environment, let's just say, even if the Wi-Fi router was just in your home and you lived in the middle of nowhere, that's a lot of microwaves exposure per second. And this is why people who live in strong Wi-Fi environments tend to struggle with insomnia and poor energy levels and poor sleep and poor hormonal health. One of my favorite sayings is, you cannot heal in the environment in which you got sick. Even if you eat the best diet, even if you take the highest quality supplements, see the best doctors, the best healthcare practitioners, like this was my story in Portland. It was like, I got the best food, I got the best doctors, I got the best alternative medicine. Like, I can't get any better than this. Like, why am I not getting better? Why I wasn't considering my environment. It doesn't really matter if you live in a strong EMF environment. This is a huge block to healing. And a lot of people try different diets, different supplements. They see cutting edge healthcare practitioners, but their health doesn't get to where they want it to be. And this is often because of the EMF exposure. And this all increases with population density. So if you're someone with cancer, autoimmunity, obesity, type 2 diabetes, this is one of the main priorities to consider when it comes to regaining your health. Population density. A lot of people struggle with finding the right diet and meal plan to support not only their health, but their taste buds as well. As a nutritionist with over 12 years experience, I want to help you answer your deep, burning questions around food, diet, meal prep, special diets, and how to swap unhealthy ingredients for healthier ingredients. And I'm opening the doors for you all to ask your questions around this very topic. And these questions will be answered right here on the Primal Pioneer podcast. All you have to do is submit your question to me, and I'll answer it during the show. Here's how you can submit your burning nutrition, food, and diet questions. Number 1, on your phone, go into your voice memo app and record your name, location, and question. Feel free to share about your health experiences, your cooking failures or successes, and personal experiences with food and nutrition. And then number 2, upload the file to me at ketocancersolution@gmail.com. That's KETO cancersolution@gmail.com. I'll play your question on the episode and will answer it in full detail to help support your dietary food adventures and healing process. I can't wait to hear and answer your questions all about food, nutrition, and healing. Now, let's head back to the episode all about environment, location, and your health. Let's go to number 3, EMFs. Now, we just touched upon this, but let's discuss a few things here, because the bigger the population density, the more man-made EMFs you're going to be exposed to. It's how the world functions today. Okay? But also, there's a lot more cell towers as well if there's more people living in a certain area. These are blocks to healing. Okay, these things need to be removed or rectified or mitigated in order to allow your immune system, your mitochondria to heal, your cells to heal fully. So I would recommend seeking out a location or home that's as far from a cell tower as possible. I know these days this is becoming more and more tricky to navigate. How the cell phone companies and Elon Musk is treating humanity and the planet, it's literally not okay. There's nothing okay about it. It's not okay that cell companies go into towns and homes and churches and schools and put up towers without asking the people, or with incentivizing them, paying them, pennies in order to put a cell phone tower up that's irradiating the whole school or community or church. It's not okay how this is happening. It's not okay that the health effects that the cell towers have on people, plants, and animals have not been considered before putting up the towers. It's not okay that Elon Musk is going to start deploying 30K 5G satellites in space starting this September 2020. We did not agree to this. Nobody asked us. They just went ahead and are doing it. And I'm just going to say, rightfully so, many people are starting to burn down the towers. They're chainsawing down the towers held up by wire. They're dynamiting the towers of steel. Putting a cell tower up anywhere without the consent of the people is a violation of our basic human rights. We literally have the right to react to this situation. Okay? We don't have to stand back and take it. And in order for this situation to change, we have to take action, and maybe that doesn't mean destroying a cell tower. If you do, don't harm anybody or anything, but these towers are already having massive health consequences. And you can read all about this in a book that I often refer to called The Invisible Rainbow. This is by Andrew Furstenberg. He's amazing. He is legit. He is a pioneer in the field of EMFs. And his message, his research needs to be heard and read because it's eye-opening. Most people, we've become so accustomed and addicted to our devices, to Wi-Fi, etc., that we want to turn the other cheek. We don't want to see the health effects of these things, but we need to when it comes to our health and the health of our children, the health of this planet, because a lot of people's health is suffering right now as a result. This book includes 200 pages of research studies alone on the negative health effects of man-made EMFs on people, plants, and animals. Super eye-opening read that I encourage everyone to read to educate yourself around this huge issue of our time. And I sense it will inspire you to take action in a way that feels good to you with regard to this subject. So I myself aim to live a minimum of 1 mile from a tower. Sometimes I can find something 4 or 5 miles away. That's becoming really challenging today, but there are some things out there. There are some places out there like this. Remember, distance is your friend when it comes to cell towers, when it comes to cell phones, when it comes to Wi-Fi. The further you are from these things, the better, the less impact you're going to have typically. I'd also encourage you to take action if this is like striking a chord or lighting a fire inside of you, to take action in your community to stop the cell tower madness. Like literally more and more cell towers. Every time I drive by somewhere, I'm like, well, there's a new tower. There's a new tower. Like bring your attention to this, because they don't think anybody's paying attention. They just think they're paying attention to their download speeds and their text messages and their Instagram stories. It's like, no, like pay attention to where these things are going up and complain. Like complain to your city, complain to your city council, complain to your governor. Get other people to complain as well, especially after you read that book with all those studies. Like, let your voice be heard. You can also visit a site called 5gspaceappeal.org to sign the petition to stop the deployment of 5G satellites and the 5G small cell towers. It's never too late to sign this. There is legal action going on behind this, so I would encourage you to go over there and sign that petition if you disagree with 5G and the cell towers and their deployment without our consent. Also, and this is important if you're considering relocating, I would encourage you to go into your town hall, ask them for a map of the cell towers in your area, including 5G towers and plans, okay? They have to give you this. This is your right to have this. If you have to say a story, whether it's true or not true, about how to get the map, ask them for the map. I am EMF sensitive. I need to know where these cell phone towers are, so when I take a walk, I don't get a migraine headache. Or my child, he is prone to seizures, so I need to make sure I know the distance that I live from the cell tower, because when we get near one, he could increase his chance of having a seizure. Whatever you have to say, this is your right to have these maps of where the cell towers are and where they're being deployed. Ask them to give this to you, okay? And don't live near them, okay? We can't right now control where the cell phone towers are going to be put up, but hopefully there's more towns, there's more cities who are speaking out against this, who are saying, no, you can't put 5G up here. No, you've got to take these towers down. So keep talking, keep using your voice, keep doing what feels good to you around this issue, because everything you do matters and makes a difference. You can also go to a site called Antenna Search. I believe it's .com. And you can put in your address or location, and it will show you how many cell phone towers are around your area. I'm not sure how often this is updated. I know it does not include 5G cell towers, but that's another resource you can check out if you want to see where the nearest cell towers are to you, how many are around you, how many satellites are around you, etc. These may seem like extreme measures, but currently these are the measures we need to take to protect our health and the health of our planet and future generations. It's just the issue. It's a main issue of our time. So if you consider relocation, if you're considering relocation to support your health, make sure or try to make sure you live as far away from a cell tower as you can. Request a map from your town hall of all the cell towers and 5G plans and 5G towers in your city or town, so you can plan accordingly and take action to prevent the future deployment of cell towers and 5G technology. And you can do that also by signing the petition at 5gspaceappeal.org. If you currently live in an area with a high population density, okay, and what do I mean by this? Greater than 200,000 people. So once you get above 200,000, this is going to increase EMF exposure to levels that could likely hinder your healing potential in more detrimental ways. So keep this in mind when considering relocation to support your health. Number 4, water. Do you ever hear yourself, do you ever hear a friend, maybe your partner say, oh, I love the ocean. I'm totally an ocean person. Or, I need to live by the water. I crave water. A lot of people literally crave living by the water, particularly the ocean. So here's the thing. If you can find a community with a low population density near the ocean, pack your bags and leave tomorrow, like seriously, or schedule your vacations or winters to these areas, because your body, your health will thank you 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times over. And here's why. I moved out of New Mexico because it didn't have any water. There were some other reasons, but that was a key reason. There was no water there. You might be thinking, Heather, like Arizona doesn't have water either. But those of you who know me know I went to an area of Arizona that's literally, our house is right on the creek. There's a natural, clean, beautiful running creek, yearly running. And I take full advantage of this creek every day, doing my cold hydrotherapy each day to recharge my battery. I do that. I lay in sunlight. I ground. It's such a reboot. It's really, really healing. It's really great. Water is life. It's literally the Energizer Bunny when you combine it with sunlight, especially. So just think about what happens when you mix water with electricity. What happens when you throw that radio into the bathtub? Well, you create a massive electrical current, right? And this is exactly what happens when you combine clean running water with sunlight, especially from the ocean. When you combine ocean water with the Sunlight RX, you literally become the sunlight. You literally become the Energizer Bunny. Combining sunlight with hydrotherapy is a way to supercharge your health. This combo is extremely healing to the mitochondria. Your mitochondria is your energy warehouse located by the thousands in each one of your cells. And it literally puts the electrical current back into your cells. When you're sick, the electrical current running through your cells, it's weak. It's like an iPhone battery that's running low on charge. It's like the sicker you are, the more that charge is getting down to the red area. And we want to quickly recharge your battery. And one of the fastest ways to do so is combining strong sunlight with natural running water from a creek, a river, or hopefully the ocean. So if you struggle with a chronic condition or if you're immunocompromised, the key to restoring your health is to jump start your battery. And the most effective way to do this that I teach my clients how to master, that I do every day, is to combine the Sunlight RX with hydrotherapy from a natural water source. Of course, the ocean is primo, but a natural body of running water is next in line. Okay, and this is like from a river or a creek, for example. So if you're sick and you live in a high population density, above 200K people, or if you live at a high latitude, the quickest and one of the most effective ways to get better is to move as close to the equator as you can. Or at least get inside the 20s, right? You want to get inside the 20s where that really strong UVB light is year round. Get to a sunny place, and then also consider water. Go by the ocean or a natural body of water with a low population density, and you're going to supercharge your battery faster than any diet or supplement plan that is in existence. Think about this. Animals migrate all the time when their environment is not supportive to their health or reproductive ability. Humans don't. And I have seen this be a big block to healing in many people. The private clients that I work with, those that are most successful with their health, are willing to relocate if need be. If this is like, hey, if I have working with a client, I'm like, hey, I think it's really important that we get you in a different environment and a different location so that you can achieve the health that you desire. And this is typically a conversation I have with people who are more sick. Okay, the sicker that one is, the more apt relocation is going to be an important part of the healing process. Now, at the very least, I encourage people to take a vacation for as long as they can to a super sunny place on the ocean, lower EMF levels, to support their health and healing in optimal ways. Okay, the butterflies fly south during the winter months. The wildebeest migrates when the waters have dried. The bear hibernates during cold winter months. Humans, however, do the same thing. They eat the same thing and they live pretty similarly despite the season. This is something we really want to change and need to change in order to support our health, okay? Before the introduction of antibiotics, people would check into something called solariums as a place of healing. Solariums were popular along the seashore as well as warm places like Georgia and the southwestern United States. And there were some places in Europe. Those with TB would often travel both near and far to visit and heal at these places. And wow, shocker, they would get better. Solariums included sunlight therapy, diet therapy, and mineral therapy via the ocean water, which is a potent combination to help expedite the healing process and strengthen cellular health and immunity, all because you're really going to be putting the charge back in your battery. This is why these nature-based modalities are such a huge part of my radical health practice today. Okay, if you're at a standstill with your health, I invite you to take a look at your environment to see if relocating is a step you might need to consider or want to consider to support your health. To do so, I invite you to ask yourself, these questions. Number 1, what's the population density that you live in? Number 2, how close are your neighbors? Number 3, how many Wi-Fi networks pop up on your devices? Number 4, how close are the cell towers to your house? Number 5, how many sunny days are in your town? You can literally Google that. Number 6, do I have access to the ocean or clean, natural running water? Number 7, do I live near an electrical power plant? Number 8, how close is the nearest cell tower to my home, to my workplace? That's something you can go to Antenna Search and your town hall to determine. So for the clients I work with who know they need to move, but they're not quite ready, we make a roadmap together to help them be as healthy as they can in their current environment. And we make a plan and a time frame, a timeline, depending on their current health status and goals as to when and where they might consider moving as a way to support their health. So if you're someone out there thinking, crap, I think I need to move so I can start to heal these deeper layers, so I can have more sunlight availability, so I can have less EMF exposure, know that you're not alone and know that you don't have to go into like this panic chaos mode. Formulate a game plan to help you get to where you want to go. Literally, pull out a map, look at a map to determine areas you might consider. Research all the elements we talked about today before packing your bags, okay? And in the meantime, get your Sunlight RX on to support your health and recovery process, and get out in nature as often as you can. Thanks so much for tuning into the show today. I hope you found this episode all about relocation and environment supportive and insightful along your healing path. For years, I struggled with my health and my TBI recovery, and each day would simply find ways to try and make it to the next day. I was just hoping that I would get better one day, but that didn't change until I changed the location and environment I lived in. If you're someone who struggles with a chronic health issue, exploring health supportive environments to relocate to could be the medicine you've been longing for. Yes, it does require a lot of life shifts, but depending on how sick you are and what you struggle with health-wise, it could be the perfect medicine for you. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate if you could take 1 minute to rate and review. Each review helps more and more people just like you learn the deeper truths about our health and healing, and unveils the deeper truths behind what actually is driving our epidemic rates of poor health today. Don't forget to take a screenshot of this episode, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me at sunlight_RX. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next week. The Primal Pioneer podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease in the Western medical sense or terms. It is to be used for educational and informational purposes only. The information shared on this podcast and all of Heather Shepard's work is not a form of diagnostic medicine, nor is it a medical treatment. Heather Shepard is a health educator, radical health practitioner, and a trained EMF specialist. And although she has a bachelor's in science and master's education in alternative medicine, she is not a medical doctor and does not give medical advice. Her work and sharing is to be used for informational and educational purposes only.